I'm standing in the backyard, my voice raised in frustration, as my mother-in-law insists she didn't put the fish tank outside, despite no one accusing her of doing so. The tension is palpable, the air thick with unspoken resentment. It's a moment that's been building for years, a culmination of countless interactions that have left me feeling drained and resentful. As I pull back, I remember the early days of living with my in-laws. My husband, daughter, and I had moved in with them, hoping to save money and build a closer relationship with his family. At first, it seemed like a good idea. We'd have family dinners together, go on outings, and enjoy each other's company. But as time went on, the cracks began to show. My mother-in-law would make thoughtless comments, my father-in-law would ignore me, and the tension would build. I'd try to brush it off, thinking that maybe I was just being sensitive, but the feeling of being unwelcome and unappreciated grew. I recall one morning, saying good morning to my father-in-law, and he just stared at me. I had to repeat myself before he finally acknowledged me. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about the dynamics of our household. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing when someone would blow up at me or make a thoughtless comment. The atmosphere was heavy, and I began to dread leaving my bedroom. By September, I'd hit my breaking point. I went to my husband, crying, and told him I was done. I couldn't keep living like this. I told him that if things didn't change, I was prepared to stay with my parents permanently. I even told him that if we couldn't prioritize our marriage and our little family, then maybe we needed to reconsider what our future looked like. It was a desperate cry for help, a plea to my husband to see the reality of our situation and do something about it. That week changed everything. When I came back, my husband and I got serious about moving. No more talking about it, no more, someday. We started actively apartment hunting, and when we finally got approved for our place, I literally fell to my knees and thanked God. After 6 years, I could finally breathe. I truly thought moving out would fix everything. It didn't. The first time I went back to my in-laws' house to do laundry, my mother-in-law ignored me when I said hello, greeted my daughter instead, walked away, and only acknowledged me later. Throughout the visit, she repeatedly questioned me about Christmas gifts and parenting decisions. I kept telling her, Christmas is still a month away. I'll get back to you. At one point, she asked to hold my daughter, which I was fine with, but I reminded her not to kiss the baby because that had been one of our boundaries since birth. She immediately got irritated and said, I know your rules. And honestly, that sentence perfectly summed up our relationship. She knew the boundaries, she just didn't like them. On another occasion, I came back to grab some of our remaining belongings and discovered that my daughter's things had been mixed in with items contaminated with cat urine. For context, their cat had been peeing on my daughter's belongings for the entirety of her life, so I had carefully separated everything that needed to be cleaned or thrown away. Finding it all mixed back together again was incredibly frustrating. Another day, while my husband was outside working on our car's oil change, my mother-in-law asked if our daughter had been sitting in the car all day. She was literally sleeping in the room. My husband immediately responded, why would we leave our baby in the car all day? And she responded, well, I have. For the first time, I felt like he was finally starting to see some of the strange assumptions and criticisms I'd been talking about for years. As the days turned into weeks, the tension continued to build. I noticed that a fish tank my husband had bought me years ago was sitting outside. I remember saying something along the lines of, why is the fish tank outside? I wasn't accusing anyone, I wasn't even talking to my mother-in-law. I was simply surprised because I knew for a fact that it had been inside the room. Almost immediately, my mother-in-law jumped into defense mode. She started insisting that she hadn't put it outside, even though no one had accused her of doing so, and no one had even said her name. The whole thing turned into this strange back and forth where I kept telling her, nobody is accusing you of anything. No one was even talking to you. Honestly, it was pointless. I eventually had to raise my voice just to shut it down because I wasn't willing to argue over something so ridiculous. I was there to grab my stuff and leave, not fight. What annoyed me the most is that my husband and I were outside in the backyard with the sliding door closed, so if she hadn't been listening so intently, she probably wouldn't have overheard the conversation in the first place. Instead of spending that time bonding with and feeding the grandbaby she claims to love so much, she somehow found a way to insert herself into a conversation that had nothing to do with her. Christmas was my final straw. We stopped by on Christmas Eve after already feeding ourselves and our daughter because we weren't sure if food would be available. My mother-in-law immediately seemed annoyed that we had already eaten and repeatedly asked whether our daughter had eaten. When I told her yes, she rolled her eyes. Later, she immediately tried to feed our daughter despite being told that she had literally just eaten. My husband stepped in and asked, "Mom, why are you trying to feed her? She already ate." I was honestly relieved that he noticed. But what really got me was the high chair. My mother-in-law had bought it for my daughter around Thanksgiving and seemed determined to use it every single time I came over. The problem was, she never really got the chance because I always kept a portable chair in my car. My husband and I go to parks, beaches, and all kinds of places, so I've always carried our own chair so my daughter can comfortably feed herself wherever we are. Fast forward to Christmas Eve, and all of a sudden my mother-in-law is making this big production about bringing out the high chair. She kept talking about how this was the first time my daughter was using it. I just sat there thinking, wait a minute. My husband has brought the baby over here by himself multiple times. Are you seriously telling me you've never brought this chair out before? So the first time it comes out is when I'm here? The even crazier part was the conversation I had with my husband the next day. I asked him, when you brought the baby over to your parents' house those other times, how did you feed her? He said, "Oh, I just fed her on my lap." So I asked, "But your mom had a high chair the whole time, right?" And he goes, "Oh, well, she told me she didn't have one." I just looked at him and said, "No, she told us she had one on Thanksgiving. She also mentioned it when we came over while you were doing the oil change." He just looked at me, and I looked right back at him and said, "Come on, babe. This is exactly why I don't play these games with your mom. My kid is not a prop. Either you bought something for her to use, or you didn't. But don't suddenly bring it out and make a big production the one time I'm there." On Christmas Day, we weren't even supposed to spend it with my in-laws. The plan was to see them on Christmas Eve, but everyone was too tired, so those plans fell through. What frustrated me was that instead of simply working with us, the holiday somehow still became about accommodating them. My husband ended up leaving in the middle of our Christmas celebration at my parents' house to take our daughter over there. I'll admit, after weeks of my mother-in-law repeatedly asking and stressing me out about Christmas lists, I thought my daughter was going to get some really thoughtful gifts. She's their only grandchild, after all. So I was honestly disappointed when my husband came home with a bag of baby food for a child who had been eating solids for months, a couple of books, and clothes that smelled strongly of cat urine. It wasn't even about the gifts themselves, it was the fact that so much pressure and hype had been built up around Christmas only for it to feel like an afterthought in the end. And knowing my mother-in-law, these clothes were probably bought long ago because she has a compulsive buying disorder and they were just repeatedly urinated on. Sitting in my car, thinking on the drive home after finishing my Christmas activity with my extended family, and smelling strong cat urine from my kids' presents, I realized, I cannot keep chasing a relationship with someone who does not respect our family unit. Since January, I haven't seen my mother-in-law. Even with all of that, we attended one of my husband's cousin's birthday parties, and once again, my mother-in-law somehow managed to make the moment about herself. My daughter had been happily interacting and playing with her younger cousins when my mother-in-law picked her up and walked away with her, isolating her from the group. At that point, I had had enough. I immediately said, "Can you please put my baby back down?" She responded with, "Oh, she doesn't want to get down." That's when I firmly said, "I don't care. Put my child back down. No one told you to take her away from the group in the first place." I was simply done staying quiet. For my father-in-law, I haven't seen him since Christmas Eve. And honestly, my mental health has improved tremendously. My husband and I started couples therapy, and while we still have a lot to work on, therapy has helped me realize something important. I never believed my in-laws were evil or malicious people. I do, however, believe they are emotionally immature. The emotional immaturity from both of my in-laws has caused not only a lot of hurt but a lot of problems within my marriage and family as well. And while I am not saying that my mother-in-law is solely responsible for the struggles my husband and I have faced, I would be lying if I said her behavior didn't significantly impact our relationship. Throughout the years we lived in their home, there were countless moments where I felt like she inserted herself into our marriage, triangulated herself between us, or made it difficult for my husband and me to simply grow as a couple. For a long time, I couldn't understand why. Therapy has helped me realize that a lot of it comes down to emotional immaturity. Emotional immaturity might help someone survive childhood, and sometimes it can even seem to work in adulthood short term. But it does not work in healthy adult relationships. Eventually, there are consequences. When I look at the situation now, I can't help but think, look at your relationship with your son. Look at your relationship with me. Look at how little you now see or know your granddaughter. There is distance now. And what saddens me the most is that there doesn't seem to be any real reflection about the role they may have played in creating that distance. Because I am reflecting. My husband is reflecting. We are both in therapy actively trying to understand our own shortcomings and become healthier people. I just wish that same level of self-reflection existed on the other side. That being said, please don't get it twisted, understanding where their behavior comes from does not excuse it. A lack of emotional maturity may explain some of their actions, but it does not justify the hurt that was caused, nor does it erase the impact those actions had on me, my marriage, and my experience as a new mother. Whenever my husband has tried explaining that I felt hurt or disrespected, their immediate response has always been, "But we did this," or, "But we did that." No reflection. No curiosity. Just defensiveness. So I guess my question for those who have gone low contact or no contact with emotionally immature in-laws is this: does it ever get better? Did your in-laws ever self-reflect and change? Did you eventually reconnect, or did you simply learn to accept the distance? Because I've been with my husband for 9 years, we have a child together, and I honestly don't know what the future is supposed to look like. For those who have lived through this, what happened in the long run? Was setting boundaries and distancing yourself the right decision, or did it ultimately lead to more pain?
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop your verdict in the comments below, subscribe for new stories every single day, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.